Hello, America. These days, America is hearing an awful lot about civil rights, and I believe deeply that we must always make sure that we as individuals and as a nation are protecting the civil rights of all of our citizens. After all, didn't we affirm this? This is our purpose, isn't it? The Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal and endowed by not their government, but by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. These words can only mean one thing. God endows man with rights. Therefore, it is the duty of every citizen, and indeed this country, to defend those rights for her citizens and all men. Today, I cast my eyes a century back to the struggle for civil rights. I can look at those chapters of America's history and see what it's trying to teach us. I look for heroes, people whose example can inspire us. Somebody that can give us hope, who lived through a very dark time and lasted for a better tomorrow. You don't really have to look far. There are heroes everywhere and dark times in American history. Booker T. Washington is the hero I want to talk to you about tonight. He was born in 1856. He was the son of a slave woman named James. His father was a white plantation owner. Booker T. Washington began at the lowest rung of the ladder in America and in American history, but he rose up quickly. He climbed every ladder rung by his own efforts. He became America's premier voice for full civil rights in his time. He founded the Tuskegee Institute. He was a champion for the legal challenges to Jim Crow. He attracted the financial support of John Rockefeller, Julius Rosenwald, and others. He did these things so Southern blacks could build good schools. He was an advisor to presidents, and they listened to his advice. And over the course of his lifetime, he planted the seeds that became the civil rights movement that really we know in our lifetime as Martin Luther King Jr. Booker T. Washington was a giant, and he taught us important lessons about what civil rights really are and what they mean. Booker T. Washington understood the realities of his time. He knew there were bigots and racists all over America in the South and the North, just as there are today. But he wasn't naive. He knew that the fight for equality would take generations. There were four things that he focused on. He said these four things would lead to full civil rights for blacks and everybody. Four things that he said black Americans had to do. First thing was industry. That meant work and invention. So he trained generations of black Americans, men, women, both. He trained as engineers and architects and other skilled professions. That way, white America could see that black Americans would work hard. He also wanted black Americans to see the dignity and reward that comes with hard work. It's called merit. Second thing, thrift. That meant savings and investment. Booker T. Washington saw that communities that don't invest in themselves go nowhere. So when someone wanted to build schools in a southern black community, he had the giants of the day that would build them all. But Booker T. Washington insisted that half of that money would come from the community. The lesson was clear. When a community contributes to its own future, it has a future. I contend the same thing is said for the individual. The third thing, intelligence. One of the great sins of racism was the theory that blacks weren't smart. They weren't as smart as whites. They couldn't learn. This view persists among bigots today. Washington knew the only way to fight falsehoods like that was with truth. So he made sure that black Americans would learn, could learn, and would learn well. He was an educator all his life because he believed that intelligence meant power. And he's right. 4, property. Black Americans sometimes didn't own their own property because they couldn't. But sometimes they wouldn't when they could. He insisted that blacks exercise their property rights because he knew that citizenship began with a right for a man to own something, own his own property, his own plot of land. He believed in the ownership of property, you would find freedom. Wow. Why isn't anybody in this office teaching that today? I think these lessons apply to all of us today, even those of us who think our civil rights are secure. They're not. They never are. If we don't demonstrate industry, practice thrift, develop our intelligence, and assert our rights to private property as individuals every day, what claim do we have to freedom? What good are civil rights if you don't act as a good citizen? What good is a right if you don't exercise your responsibility? Liberty, freedom, and dignity may be guaranteed to us, but we still have to exercise our rights and our responsibilities. God doesn't grant us equal rights so that we can hang around and do nothing. He wants us to be agents of freedom, active in our own life, masters of our own destiny, as individuals and as a country. Booker T. Washington knew this. He knew that civil rights are not bestowed on men by man. They are bestowed by God on men, and then they are earned every single day. And they are not earned once in one generation, but every day by every generation. Every American must understand that the strength and durability of their civil rights, all of us, depend on what we do with our own life. That's how this country became great. It's just that easy. That's how black Americans won their right. And that's the way we'll see a better tomorrow. Much, much better than today. Thanks. Thanks for watching. And may God bless the Republic.